At their son's graduation, he called his mistress, the woman who raised him. But when his wife stood up, everyone learned the truth. What would you do if your spouse erased your place in your own child's life? Now, let's return to that morning. The first thing Maya noticed at her son's graduation was that another woman's name had been placed where hers should have been. At 9:15 on a bright Saturday morning in early June, Harrington Performing Arts Center hummed with camera shutters, polished shoes, and the soft rustle of commencement programs. Sunlight poured through the high glass panels and caught the gold trim on the stage curtains. Maya Bennett Hale stood at the entrance to the family section in a cream-tailored suit, one hand resting against the burgundy program folder she had carried in from the parking lot. Her breathing stayed even, but the muscles beneath her jaw tightened when she saw the reserved cards. Grant Hale sat in the center of the front row, immaculate in a navy suit, speaking to two school donors as though the room belonged to him. The chair beside him displayed a white card printed with Lauren Pierce, family mentor. Maya's name appeared 6 rows back beneath general family guest. Lauren stood near the aisle in a pale blue dress, blonde hair pinned into a smooth, low twist, greeting faculty members with both hands and a practiced warmth. She had already placed her handbag on the chair beside Grant. "There must be a mistake," Maya said to the usher. The young woman checked her tablet. The seating update came through the event branding account yesterday afternoon. "Whose account?" The usher glanced toward the front row. "Hale Strategic Partners." Maya looked at Grant. He saw her, offered no sign of surprise, then returned to his conversation. Behind the stage curtains, Caleb waited with the graduating class. He wore a dark green cap and gown, the gold valedictorian cord resting against his chest. In his hands was the burgundy speech folder he had carried through every rehearsal that week. When he noticed Maya near the aisle, he slipped away from the line long enough to reach her. "Mom, why are you back here?" he asked. Maya touched the edge of his cord, straightening it where it had twisted. There was a seating change. Caleb looked toward the front row and saw Lauren's card. His fingers closed harder around the folder. "That's not what they showed us at rehearsal." "I know. Did Dad do this?" Maya held his gaze. His face still carried the boy she had watched sleep beneath hospital monitors, but today belonged to the young man who had earned every step toward that stage. "You have one job this morning," she said. "Walk across that stage knowing who you are." "And you?" "I'll be exactly where I need to be." Grant approached before Caleb could answer. His smile remained in place for the nearby cameras. "You're holding up the procession. Why was the family seating changed?" Maya asked. "Lauren has a role in the event. She has a vendor role." Grant lowered his voice. "Do not start this here. My name was removed from my son's family section. You were moved, not removed." Caleb looked between them. "Dad, this is my graduation." "Exactly," Grant said. "So everyone needs to stay composed." Lauren joined them carrying a stack of printed programs. "Caleb, the media team wants one quick photo before you line up." She reached toward his shoulder as if to adjust his gown. Caleb stepped back. The movement was small, but Maya saw it. Lauren did too. "We should keep things positive," Lauren said. "Today is about the people who helped guide him." Maya accepted one of the programs from her. Inside, beneath Grant's sponsor remarks, Lauren was listed again as family mentor and special guest. Maya's own name appeared nowhere in the family acknowledgments. She ran her thumb along the fresh ink. The wording had not been in the version Caleb brought home after rehearsal. "Who approved this edition?" she asked. Lauren's expression remained pleasant. "The branding team finalized it. After the school approved the program." Grant stepped between them. "Maya, sit down. You're making this personal." She looked at the stage, then at the burgundy folder in Caleb's hands. It became personal when someone rewrote his family. The first bell sounded, calling graduates into formation. Caleb returned to the line, glancing back once before the curtain closed behind him. Maya took the seat assigned 6 rows from the front without protest. She placed the altered program across her lap and opened it beside the original event schedule still saved on her phone. The two versions did not match. Grant and Lauren had assumed moving her name would move her authority with it. They had not yet realized the woman seated quietly behind them knew exactly which records the school was required to keep. Lauren smiled for the cameras as if motherhood were another title Grant had arranged for her. The orchestra began its processional, and the audience rose while rows of graduates entered beneath the gold-trimmed curtains. Maya stood with everyone else, the altered program resting against her palm, but her eyes remained on Caleb. He walked at the front of his class in the dark green gown, the burgundy speech folder held close to his side. When he reached the stage steps, Lauren leaned into the aisle and lifted her phone, calling his name loudly enough for the nearby parents to turn. "Caleb, look here, sweetheart." He glanced toward the sound out of reflex. The camera captured Lauren smiling beside Grant, both framed beneath the reserved family sign. Maya remained 6 rows behind them, outside the shot. A woman seated nearby whispered to her husband, "That must be his mother." Maya heard the words clearly. She did not correct them. The mistake belonged to the scene Grant had built, not to the stranger repeating what she had been shown. Once the graduates were seated, a short tribute video began on the screen above the stage. Childhood photographs moved across it in time with soft piano music. Caleb at science fairs, Caleb holding a soccer trophy, Caleb beside Grant at a charity dinner, Caleb standing between Grant and Lauren during a winter fundraiser. Maya waited for the image from his first day of school, the hospital recovery photograph, or the picture of them reading together during the year he learned from home. None appeared. The video jumped from early childhood to his final 2 years, erasing the years in between as neatly as her name had vanished from the program. Lauren turned slightly in her chair to watch the audience's reaction. When she noticed Maya looking at the screen, she offered a sympathetic smile, as though exclusion were a regrettable consequence of poor visibility rather than a deliberate edit. During the first applause break, Grant walked back along the aisle and stopped beside Maya's row. He kept his voice low, but not low enough to prevent the couple beside her from hearing. "You need to stop staring at Lauren like she did something wrong." She approved a tribute that removed Caleb's childhood. The video focuses on his recent development. It focuses on the years she was present. Grant exhaled through his nose. Lauren helped shape him into the student everyone sees today. "You were busy running Astor Ridge." Maya looked at him. "I stepped away from daily operations for 3 years because Caleb was recovering. And then you went back. Because he got stronger." Grant glanced toward the stage, where a school official was introducing the faculty. "This is not the time to compete over who sacrificed more." "I'm not competing." "Then let Lauren have her moment." The words settled between them with astonishing ease. Grant believed the ceremony was a stage he could allocate, one role at a time. He believed Maya's distance from daily school operations had made her ornamental, a founder whose name belonged on reports but not in decisions. More dangerously, he believed the vendor contract gave Heir strategic enough influence to shape how Astor Ridge presented itself. "You seem very certain this is yours to give," Maya said. Grant straightened his jacket. "I understand how these events work. You understand curriculum. Stay in your lane." He returned to the front row before she answered. Minutes later, Lauren appeared beside the stage photographer and waved Caleb over during a transition. She adjusted his cap, placed one hand against his chest, and posed beside him beneath an Astor Ridge backdrop. "One with the woman who guided you," she said brightly. Caleb's expression changed, but the photographer had already raised the camera. Maya watched Lauren sign the digital release tablet using the title Family Mentor, then select an option, authorizing the image for Heir Strategic's graduation campaign. The tablet bore the Astor Ridge logo. Lauren had just approved commercial use of Maya's son through a school-branded system she had no authority to control. Grant tried to turn Maya's silence into a signature before the first diploma had even been awarded. At 9:38 a.m., while the faculty choir moved into place and the audience settled beneath the warm theater lights, he appeared beside her row holding a black presentation folder. His navy suit remained immaculate, his expression composed for the cameras drifting through the aisles. Lauren stood near the stage in her pale blue dress, speaking quietly with the media coordinator and glancing back often enough to make it clear she was waiting for the paperwork to be completed. Grant placed the folder across Maya's lap without asking. "Sign the acknowledgement," he said. She opened it. The first page authorized Heir strategic partners to use Caleb's graduation images, selected family photographs, and portions of his academic story in a national campaign. The second described Lauren as a long-term family mentor whose guidance helped shape Caleb's success. The final page stated that Maya had reviewed the family narrative and did not object to its public use. The language did not transfer custody, ownership, or any legal status. It did something simpler and more useful to Grant. It gave his company written consent to market a version of Caleb's life that erased the person seated in front of him. You prepared this before today, Maya said. The campaign deadline is Monday. That wasn't my question. Grant lowered himself into the empty chair beside her, though it belonged to another family. This is a media release, not a confession. Caleb is 18. The school already has image permissions on file. The school's permission does not give your company the right to rewrite his family. No one is rewriting anything. Maya tapped the paragraph naming Lauren. This says she helped raise him. She has been present during the most important years. She met him 2 years ago. Grant's mouth hardened. And you spent those years focused on Astor Ridge. The couple seated on Maya's other side turned toward the stage, pretending not to hear. Grant noticed their discomfort and used it. He leaned closer. Do not create a public dispute at your own school. People will remember the scene, not the details. There it was, the pressure beneath the paperwork. He believed Maya's position made her easier to silence, because any reaction could be labeled unprofessional. What happens if I don't sign? She asked. Heir Strategic proceeds with the materials already approved through the vendor account. Your refusal will be noted as personal disagreement, not a corporate objection. You cannot authorize that on behalf of Astor Ridge. I don't need to. The communications team already accepted the revised program and tribute package. Through whose approval? Lauren manages the account. Maya looked toward the front, where Lauren now stood beside Caleb beneath the school backdrop. The photographer showed them the image on a tablet. Lauren nodded, then signed again. Grant followed Maya's gaze. You should be grateful she's willing to stand beside him. Maya felt the words move through her, cold and exact. I stood beside him before she knew his name. Then stop acting threatened by a woman who showed up when it mattered. For 1 second, the theater blurred at the edges. Maya saw a hospital hallway at 3 a.m, a paper cup of coffee cooling between her hands, Caleb asleep behind glass. She closed the folder before the memory could reach her face. I will not sign this. Grant extended his hand. Give it back. No, it belongs to Heir Strategic. It was presented to me for signature. I'm retaining the copy I received. His voice dropped further. You're making a mistake. Maya slid the black folder beneath the altered commencement program and placed both inside her burgundy tote. Then she opened her phone, photographed the seating card, the family mentor listing, and the acknowledgement signature page. She sent the images to Evelyn Brooks with a single message. Please verify the approved commencement materials, the scope of Heir Strategic's vendor authority, and whether any consent exists for Lauren Pierce to authorize use of Caleb's image. The message showed delivered. Grant stood, smoothing the front of his jacket as the applause began for the first speaker. He returned to Lauren without another word. Maya kept the unsigned acknowledgement in her possession. In trying to force her consent, Grant had handed her the first written proof that the lie about who raised Caleb was not an emotional mistake. It was a campaign strategy. Evelyn's reply arrived while Grant was still smiling beside Lauren, as if the altered program had already become the official history of their family. At 9:47 a.m., Maya's phone vibrated once against the burgundy tote beneath her chair. She waited until the school orchestra began a transitional piece, then slipped quietly from the row and moved through a side door into the backstage corridor. The air there was cooler, carrying the smell of stage dust, coffee, and fresh-cut flowers waiting for the graduates. Through the wall, applause rose and fell in measured waves. Maya stood beneath a framed photograph of an earlier commencement class and opened Evelyn Brooks's message. The approved program did not list Lauren Pierce as a family mentor. The original seating chart placed Maya beside Grant in the family section. No consent existed authorizing Lauren to approve commercial use of Caleb's image. Evelyn ended with a direct instruction. Call me before the sponsor remarks. Maya pressed the number. Evelyn answered with Judith Cole already on the line. We have 9 minutes before Grant's scheduled segment, Judith said. Tell us exactly what you received. Maya described the altered program, the tribute video, Lauren's digital release, and the unsigned media acknowledgement now inside her bag. She kept her voice low while stagehands moved past carrying diploma covers. Do not stop the ceremony, she said. Caleb has earned this day. We can remove Grant from the program, Judith replied. Not yet. Maya looked through the narrow window in the corridor door. Grant sat in the front row, leaning toward Lauren while she checked something on her tablet. He appeared untroubled, certain that Maya had retreated because his pressure had worked. "I want the approved materials preserved beside the versions they changed," Maya said. "I also want the access logs for the vendor account, the final sponsor script, and the tribute video revision history." Evelyn's tone became procedural. "That is appropriate. The school retains program drafts, account activity, and event media under standard records policy. We can place an administrative hold without disrupting the ceremony." "Do it," Judith asked. "What about Caleb's photograph?" "Suspend external campaign, use pending consent review. Leave the graduation photographer alone. Families should still receive their personal images." Maya had no intention of turning every camera in the building into part of the conflict. The problem was not the photograph. It was the authority Lauren had claimed when she signed for someone else's child under the school's name. Evelyn began issuing instructions through the existing chain of command. The communications office would preserve the vendor account log. The media coordinator would retain the signed digital release rather than publish it. The approved program and tribute file would be locked against further edits. Grant's sponsor remarks would continue only because removing him without review could create confusion in the middle of commencement. "We need your confirmation on one point," Evelyn said. "Did you authorize Heir Strategic to modify family designations for this event?" "No, did the board?" "Not to my knowledge," Judith answered. "It did not." Maya closed her eyes for one breath, then opened them. "And did anyone authorize Lauren to describe herself as having raised Caleb?" "No," Judith said. "That language appears nowhere in the approved sponsor script." The corridor door opened, and Grant stepped through. He had probably noticed Maya's empty seat. His expression stayed pleasant until he saw the phone in her hand. "Who are you calling?" "Evelyn and Judith." "Why?" "To verify the materials your vendor account changed." Grant glanced toward the stage entrance. "You're escalating a family disagreement into a corporate issue. Your company used Astor Ridge Systems to alter a school event. Lauren manages branding. That is her job, not family records, not student consent." He lowered his voice. "You are proving exactly why I didn't involve you in the final edits. You cannot separate being Caleb's mother from running the company." Maya met his eyes. "You are the one who merged them into a campaign." A stage coordinator appeared at the end of the hall and signaled that Grant's remarks would begin in 3 minutes. He straightened his cuffs. "By the time this is over, everyone will understand who has actually been present for Caleb." Then he returned toward the stage, still believing the microphone would settle the argument in his favor. Maya remained in the corridor until Evelyn's final confirmation arrived. The original commencement file had been secured. The vendor access log showed Lauren's account made the changes, and Grant's executive credential approved them 22 minutes later. Heir Strategic had not merely exceeded a creative brief. It had used vendor access to rewrite the family role of the controlling chair's own son without authorization. The first consequence appeared before Grant reached the microphone. Lauren's campaign upload was denied by the same school system she had used to erase Maya. At 9:56 a.m., the media coordinator intercepted Lauren near the stage stairs and quietly returned the tablet she had signed. The external use status now displayed suspended, consent review required. Lauren tapped the screen twice, then looked toward the communications booth, where a staff member shook her head and pointed to the event record notice. The graduation photographer continued working. Family photos would still be delivered. But Heir Strategic could no longer export Caleb's image, publish the altered tribute, or move any commencement material into its commercial campaign until Astor Ridge completed its review. "There's a technical hold," Lauren whispered when Grant joined her behind the curtain. "Remove it." "I can't. The vendor account is read-only." Grant took the tablet from her and entered his executive credential. The same notice appeared beneath his name. "Access limited pending administrative review." From 6 rows back, Maya watched the exchange without moving. She had returned to her assigned chair, placed the unsigned acknowledgement beneath the altered program, and folded her hands over the burgundy tote. Around her, parents adjusted cameras and graduates shifted beneath their gowns, unaware that the ceremony's digital systems had begun correcting themselves. Grant stepped toward Judith Cole near the wings. "Why was our account restricted?" he asked. Judith kept her voice low. because unauthorized changes were made to student-facing materials and family designations. Lauren had production authority. She had branding access within the approved scope. This is a live event. You cannot suspend a vendor in the middle of it. Your remarks are still proceeding. Commercial exports and further edits are paused. Grant glanced toward the audience, measuring how much of the exchange could be seen. Maya requested this. The records required it. That answer unsettled him more than an accusation would have. He had expected a marital argument he could dismiss as jealousy. Instead, the response came through policy, logs, and consent controls that did not care how confidently he spoke. Lauren tried the upload again. A second refusal appeared. The tribute video is locked too, she said. The revised version is already in the program, Grant replied. They can't undo what people saw. Then his name was announced. Applause followed as he walked onto the stage beneath the Astor Ridge crest. He placed both hands on the podium and smiled toward the graduating class. His remarks began safely. Resilience, mentorship, the discipline required to turn promise into achievement. He thanked faculty, families, and Heir Strategic's creative team for helping tell the story of a remarkable class. Maya listened to the pauses more than the words. Grant was waiting for the line he believed would turn Lauren's temporary title into a public fact. And for Caleb, he continued, shifting his gaze toward the front row. Success was shaped not only by teachers, but by the woman who stood beside him through the years that mattered most. Lauren rose before he said her name. The camera found her. Several guests applauded in anticipation. Grant extended one hand toward her. Lauren Pierce has been the woman who raised him into the young man we celebrate today. The applause grew unevenly. Some people stood because others had. Lauren pressed one hand to her chest, accepting the recognition. Maya remained seated. She did not look at Grant. She looked at Caleb. On stage with the graduating class, he gripped the burgundy speech folder so tightly that the corners bent beneath his fingers. His eyes moved from Lauren to Maya, and the hurt there was not confusion. It was recognition. Grant had not made a careless remark. He had rehearsed an erasure. Maya's phone vibrated once inside her tote. Evelyn had preserved the live recording and matched Grant's exact sentence to language in Heir Strategic's renewal campaign deck. The deck proposed a 5-year exclusive national branding contract built around Caleb's graduation story, with Lauren presented as Astor Ridge's family education ambassador. The insult had never been only about who sat in the front row. Grant was using his son's life and his mistress's invented motherhood to secure control of the school system's public identity. 10 years before Grant gave another woman credit for raising Caleb, Maya had built her life around a hospital chair no one ever photographed. The memory came back while applause for Lauren still trembled through Harrington Performing Arts Center. Maya remained seated with the altered program on her lap, but in her mind the gold curtains dissolved into the pale green walls of Boston Children's Hospital. Caleb had been 8 then, small beneath a heated blanket after his first heart surgery, his fingers curled around a red plastic pulse sensor. Maya sat beside him in a vinyl chair that refused to recline, wearing the same clothes she had put on 30 hours earlier. A laptop rested on the windowsill. Her phone vibrated every few minutes with messages from Astor Ridge, which at the time operated only 2 schools and had just begun negotiations for a third. She answered what could not wait from the hallway, speaking softly beneath fluorescent lights, then returned before Caleb opened his eyes. Grant arrived near midnight carrying a leather briefcase and 2 coffees. Heir Strategic had just signed its first major regional client, and he had spent the day presenting in New York. "You should go home," he told her, setting the coffee beside the bed. "I can stay tonight." Caleb stirred when Grant touched the rail. Maya saw the fear move across their son's face before he was fully awake. "Mom," he whispered. She was already standing. "I'm here." Grant remained for less than an hour. A client called, then another. Before leaving, he kissed Caleb's forehead and promised he would be back after the morning meeting. Maya watched him disappear through the sliding door, then folded her blazer beneath Caleb's feet so the blanket would not slip. Weeks later, when doctors told them recovery would require home instruction, therapy appointments, medication schedules, and another surgery within 2 years, Maya stepped away from daily executive operations at Astor Ridge. She asked Judith Cole to take over as president, moved meetings around Caleb's care, and turned the dining room into a classroom. On winter mornings, she taught him fractions with measuring cups while soup simmered on the stove. On difficult afternoons, she sat on the floor beside him as he learned to climb the stairs again without becoming afraid of his own heartbeat. Grant called whenever he could. He sent gifts from airports, attended the appointments his schedule allowed, and told everyone Maya was taking some time off. She never corrected the phrase publicly. She did not want Caleb's illness turned into a corporate explanation or Grant's absence turned into a family scandal. She protected his growing company from questions, and she protected their son from becoming the reason adults judged his father. At first, Grant thanked her for carrying what he could not. Then the wording changed. He began telling clients that Maya had chosen to focus on education while he handled the family's public responsibilities. Later, he described himself as the parent who kept everything stable during Caleb's medical years. Maya heard the revisions and let them pass because Caleb was healing, Astor Ridge was expanding, and the marriage still seemed larger than any single sentence. Her silence gave Grant room to replace memory with narrative. The only time he had been required to state the truth plainly was during Caleb's return to school. In the principal's office, Grant signed the parent acknowledgement identifying Maya as primary parent of record, emergency contact, and the person authorized to coordinate medical and academic decisions. He read the first page, initialed the second, then stopped at the photograph clipped inside the burgundy folder Caleb now carried on stage. A picture of Maya asleep beside his hospital bed, one hand still resting on the blanket near his heart. Grant had looked at it for a long moment. "He'll remember who stayed," he said quietly. Maya believed him. Beneath that photograph, his signature remained on the acknowledgement, confirming exactly who had raised their son through the years he was now giving away to someone else. Astor Ridge had never been Grant's platform to control. It was Maya's company, and the limits on his access had been written into the contract he chose to treat as ceremonial. She had founded Astor Ridge Education Group before Caleb entered first grade, when the first campus operated from a converted brick schoolhouse outside Boston. Maya had built the academic model, recruited the original faculty, and raised the capital without attaching her family's private life to the brand. As the company expanded, it became a privately held Delaware C corporation overseeing 6 college preparatory schools. Maya retained 68% of the voting shares, enough to control shareholder decisions and appoint the board, while long-term investors and senior managers held the remainder. She served as founder, controlling chair, and chief academic architect, but she did not manage every schedule, ceremony, or vendor account. That distinction had allowed her to step back during Caleb's medical recovery without surrendering the company she created. When Judith Cole became president, daily operations moved through Judith and the executive team. Maya kept authority over governance, major contracts, and the educational standards that defined Astor Ridge. Her position was not secret inside the company. It simply was not used as family publicity. Grant knew the structure because Hale Strategic Partners had entered it through a vendor contract 2 years earlier. His firm was hired to manage branding, external communications, and selected event production. The contract gave Hale strategic access to approved media systems and campaign materials. It did not provide stock, a board seat, control over school records, or authority to decide how students and families were represented. Before the first campaign launched, Evelyn Brooks had reviewed the agreement with Grant in Astor Ridge's Boston boardroom. Maya remembered the afternoon clearly. Rain pressed against the windows while Grant sat across from her, turning a silver pen between his fingers. Evelyn explained that student names, family stories, health histories, and commencement materials required documented approval. Vendor users could edit only within assigned scopes. Any material misrepresentation, unauthorized use of student information, or false claim of governance authority could trigger immediate suspension pending corporate review. Grant followed the discussion closely when Evelyn reached the fees, renewal schedule, and exclusivity options. When she returned to the restrictions, his attention drifted to his phone. "This is standard vendor language," he said. "It is also enforceable language," Evelyn replied. She directed him to the acknowledgement page stating that Hale Strategic had no governance rights and could not alter official school content without written authorization. Grant initialed each paragraph, signed the final page, and passed it back without reading the examples attached to the student consent section. Maya asked him once whether he understood the boundary between brand work and school authority. Of course, he said. You own the company. I make it visible. At the time, the answer sounded respectful. Over the next 2 years, he began speaking as though visibility created influence. He introduced Heir Strategic as Astor Ridge's strategic voice, then as the team shaping the system's public direction. Lauren adopted the same language. Because Maya avoided placing herself at the center of campaigns, Grant interpreted her restraint as distance. Because Judith handled daily operations, he treated Maya's chairmanship as symbolic. Because his company had credentials to the media platform, he began acting as though access to the system meant authority over its contents. Back in the backstage corridor, Evelyn sent Maya the records already secured that morning. The vendor contract displayed Grant's initials beside the prohibition on changing family designations and student-facing content. The access log showed Lauren's account replacing Maya's name, editing the tribute video, and inserting the family mentor title. 22 minutes later, Grant's executive vendor credential approved every change. His sponsor script then repeated the same false narrative in public, and the renewal campaign deck used it to seek a 5-year exclusive contract. No hidden clause had appeared. No new authority was being invented. Grant had signed the limits, approved the violations, and spoken the misrepresentation into the event record himself. Evelyn's final message was concise. The material misrepresentation threshold has been met. Heir Strategic's access may now be suspended pending board review. Grant and Lauren were not trying to win one flattering moment at Caleb's graduation. They were trying to turn that moment into a 5-year claim over the public identity of Maya's entire school system. The campaign deck arrived on Evelyn's tablet while the applause from Grant's speech was still fading inside Harrington Performing Arts Center. Maya stood in the backstage corridor beneath the framed photographs of past graduating classes, the altered commencement program tucked inside her burgundy tote. On the screen, Heir Strategic's proposal unfolded with the precision of something prepared long before that morning. The first section used Caleb's graduation as a national case study in mentorship. The second introduced Lauren Pierce as Astor Ridge's proposed family education ambassador. The third requested an exclusive 5-year renewal, giving Heir Strategic primary control over national branding, graduation storytelling, parent outreach campaigns, and student success. Media across all 6 schools. They are not asking for ownership, Maya said quietly. They are asking to become the only voice the public hears. Judith Cole nodded from the video call. And they are using today's ceremony as proof that the role already exists. The deck placed Lauren beside Caleb beneath the Astor Ridge crest, describing her as a stabilizing maternal influence during his final years. Maya appeared only once, identified as founder and academic strategist. No mention of the hospital years. No mention of the 3 years she stepped away from daily operations. No mention that she held 68% of the voting shares and shared the company Grant's firm hoped to represent exclusively. Grant understood part of the truth. He knew Maya controlled the corporation. He had signed the vendor acknowledgement. He had sat in the Boston boardroom while Evelyn explained that Heir Strategic possessed no governance rights. But he also knew Maya protected Caleb from public conflict and avoided using family pain as corporate theater. His plan depended on that restraint. If Lauren received applause, if the revised program circulated, if the tribute video spread, and if the board saw an apparently successful launch, Grant believed Maya would face a choice between correcting the lie and appearing to ruin her son's graduation. Lauren's future depended on the same pressure. The campaign deck included her proposed title, compensation structure, speaking schedule, and national media role. None had been approved. Yet each page was written as though approval were the final administrative step after a public fact had already been established. They expect the board to ratify the image because rejecting it afterward will look unstable, Judith said. That is the strategy, Maya replied. Make the story visible first. Ask permission second. Inside the auditorium, Grant returned to his seat while Lauren accepted congratulations from parents who believed the introduction they had just heard. Caleb remained on stage with the burgundy folder pressed against his knee. He had not yet delivered his valedictorian address. Maya could have asked Judith to cut the sponsor feed, remove Lauren from the front row, and announce an immediate correction. Instead, she looked at the campaign deck's final page. It contained a sponsor certification Grant was scheduled to sign after the remarks, confirming that the family narrative, titles, and media materials accurately reflected the individuals represented. Lauren's companion certification affirmed that she held authority to participate in the campaign role described. Have they signed? Maya asked. Not yet, Evelyn said. The forms are waiting at the sponsor desk. Then preserve them and let the scheduled process continue. Judith studied her through the screen. You want them to complete the record? Maya looked through the corridor window toward Caleb. He had spent years learning not to fear the sound of his own heartbeat. She would not teach him now that the loudest person automatically owned the truth. Do not interrupt the ceremony, she said. Do not block the signatures. Keep the original program, the access logs, the vendor contract, Caleb's approved speech, and the campaign deck together. And when Grant signs? Evelyn asked. Maya closed the tablet cover. Then the same room where he tried to rewrite our son's life will have everything it needs to verify who raised him and who actually has authority here. Grant signed the lie beneath the same Astor Ridge crest Maya had spent years protecting. At 10:58 a.m., the ceremony entered its final sponsor segment, and the Harrington Performing Arts Center glowed beneath white stage lights and the flash of hundreds of phones. Grant stood beside the sponsor desk near the wings, still buoyed by the applause that had followed his tribute to Lauren. She remained in the front row, accepting quiet congratulations from parents who now believed she had carried Caleb through the most difficult years of his life. Maya sat 6 rows behind them with the altered commencement program resting across her knees. She did not rise. She did not correct anyone. On stage, Caleb waited with the burgundy speech folder held against his chest, his eyes fixed on the podium where he would soon deliver the valedictorian address the school had already approved. Evelyn Brooks stood near the media booth with the original program, vendor access logs, campaign deck, and Heir strategic contract secured in the event record. Judith Cole watched from the side aisle, her expression composed. Grant approached the sponsor desk after the moderator thanked Heir Strategic for its partnership. A school staff member placed the certification form before him. This confirms that the remarks, titles, and campaign materials you submitted accurately represent the people and authority described, she said. Grant barely glanced at the page. Of course they do. He signed in dark blue ink, then added the date beneath his name. Lauren joined him moments later. Her form identified her as the proposed Astor Ridge Family Education Ambassador and required her to confirm that her title, family narrative, and media participation had been properly authorized. She looked toward Grant. This is the last step? She asked. It is administrative, he replied. Once the board sees the response today, they will approve the renewal. Lauren signed. The pen paused only once, above the sentence stating that she had not knowingly misrepresented her relationship to any student or family. Then she finished her name with a clean upward stroke. Grant placed one hand at the small of her back and guided her toward the stage stairs. We should stand with Caleb during the closing photographs, he said. Maya heard the words from where she sat. She remained still as Lauren stepped into the aisle and adjusted the front of her pale blue dress. The moderator returned to the microphone. Before we hear from our valedictorian, Mr. Hale and Ms. Pierce have requested recognition of their upcoming National Family Education Initiative. Grant smiled toward the front tables. This campaign will bring Astor Ridge's values to families across the country. Subject to board approval, Judith said from the side aisle. The microphone carried her voice farther than she intended, but Grant only nodded. Naturally, though I think today has shown why the partnership deserves to continue. He believed the applause had become leverage. He believed the image of Lauren beside Caleb had already done what signatures and contract language could not. He believed Maya would remain seated to spare their son public embarrassment. Evelyn waited until Grant and Lauren had completed the forms, until the live recording captured their statements, and until the moderator accepted the certifications into the event file. Then she walked toward Judith carrying the original commencement program and the vendor contract. Judith reviewed the first pages, looked toward Maya, and gave a single nod. The tribute screen behind the stage went dark. A new title appeared, Official Program and Authority Verification. Grant turned toward the media booth. What is this? Judith stepped onto the stage. A required correction before the valedictorian address and before any campaign representation proceeds. Lauren moved closer to Grant. You said the board would not interfere today. He did not answer. Evelyn placed the corporate shareholder certification beneath the document camera, followed by the original program and Heir Strategics signed vendor acknowledgement. Judith faced the audience. The school must correct unauthorized changes made to this ceremony and identify the person with final corporate authority over Astor Ridge Education Group. She looked past Grant, past Lauren, and toward the sixth row. Dr. Maya Bennett Hale, founder and controlling chair, would you please stand and join us on stage? Maya did not rise to take credit from Lauren. She rose because the company record could no longer be allowed to support a lie about her son. She stood from the sixth row with the altered program in one hand and walked toward the stage beneath the fixed gaze of parents, faculty, and graduates. The cream suit she had chosen for Caleb's ceremony caught the white stage light, but her face remained composed. Grant stepped away from the sponsor desk and reached for the microphone. Judith Cole moved between him and the podium. The correction will proceed through the official record, she said. Evelyn Brooks placed the corporate shareholder certification beneath the document camera. The screen enlarged the filing summary for Astor Ridge Education Group, identifying the company as a privately held Delaware corporation and confirming that Dr. Maya Bennett Hale held 68% of the voting shares. The next page named her founder, controlling chair, and chief academic architect. Dr. Bennett Hale does not manage every event or vendor account, Evelyn said, but she controls the voting interest that appoints this board and oversees major corporate decisions. Grant opened his phone and began searching the company portal. She stepped away from operations years ago. Judith answered him without raising her voice. She delegated daily management to the president. She did not surrender ownership or governance authority. Lauren moved toward the screen, then stopped when the original commencement program appeared beside the altered version. Maya's name was listed in the approved family section. Lauren's title did not exist. The tribute file history followed, showing the removal of Maya's photographs through Heir Strategics vendor account. Then Evelyn displayed the signed vendor acknowledgement bearing Grant's initials beside the limits he had violated. Grant turned toward the media booth. Take that down. This is a family matter. You used a corporate system, a student event, and a renewal campaign, Maya said. Her voice carried evenly through the auditorium. You made it a company matter. Lauren began gathering the campaign packets from the sponsor table. A staff member stopped her. Those materials are now part of the review file. I was told the role had been approved, Lauren said. You signed a certification stating you knew it was authorized, Evelyn replied. Lauren looked at Grant. You said Maya was only a distant founder. Grant did not answer. Instead, he tried to log into the Heir Strategic vendor dashboard. A red notice appeared across his screen. Access suspended pending material misrepresentation review. Lauren's account displayed the same message. The decision had not come from Maya alone. Judith had activated the suspension under the existing contract after Evelyn verified the access logs, the altered program, the false family designations, and the signed certifications. No student records were deleted. No ceremony system was shut down. Heir Strategics simply lost the ability to edit, export, publish, or represent Astor Ridge content while the board reviewed the misconduct. Maya then turned toward Caleb. He stood beside the podium with the burgundy folder pressed against his chest. She did not ask him to defend her. She only held out her hand. Caleb crossed the stage and gave her the folder. Inside was the approved speech, the photograph from the hospital, and the words he had written before Grant changed the program. Do you still want to read this? She asked quietly. Caleb looked toward his father, then toward Lauren, then back at Maya. More than before. She returned the folder to him and stepped away from the microphone. Caleb opened to the first page. He spoke about courage, recovery, and the people who stayed when no applause existed. He described a mother who slept beside hospital monitors, taught him at the dining room table, and built schools while making sure he never felt like a burden. He never insulted Grant. He never mentioned Lauren's affair. He simply restored the years they had tried to remove. When he finished, Judith read the formal administrative action into the event record. Heir Strategics vendor privileges, campaign activity, and representative authority were suspended effective immediately, with a board review scheduled for the following week. Grant remained beside the sponsor desk, holding a phone that no longer opened the system he believed he controlled. The board did not meet to decide whether Grant had humiliated his wife. It met to determine how far Heir Strategic had used Astor Ridge's systems to manufacture authority it did not possess. The emergency review began the following Monday at 8:30 a.m. in Astor Ridge's Boston boardroom, with Maya seated at the end of the walnut table beside Judith Cole and Evelyn Brooks. Grant attended with counsel from Heir Strategic. Lauren sat 2 chairs behind him, her pale blue dress from graduation replaced by a charcoal suit that made her look more like the executive she had claimed to be. The board received only the materials already preserved, the original commencement program, the altered version, the tribute video history, the seating changes, the vendor access logs, the unsigned media acknowledgement, the 5-year renewal deck, Grant's sponsor certification, Lauren's ambassador certification, and the contract acknowledgement limiting Heir Strategic's authority. Evelyn began with the access sequence. Lauren's account changed Maya's family designation, removed approved photographs, inserted the mentor title, and prepared Caleb's image for commercial export. Grant's executive vendor credential approved each change. The renewal deck then used the altered narrative to support a request for exclusive control over national branding across all 6 schools. "We were developing a campaign concept," Grant said. The language was aspirational. Judith looked at the signed certification on the screen. "You presented it as accurate during a live school event. The audience response demonstrated market value. The audience responded to information your company had falsified." Lauren turned toward Grant. "You told me the board had already accepted the ambassador role in principle." Grant kept his attention on the directors. The title would have been formalized after renewal. Evelyn opened the board minutes. No ambassador position had been proposed, reviewed, or approved. Lauren stared at the empty search results, then at the campaign deck, carrying her photograph beneath a title that existed only inside Grant's promise. "You said Maya controlled academics, not corporate decisions," she said. Grant's voice sharpened. "This is not the time. You said the voting shares were symbolic because Judith ran the company." Maya watched Lauren understand the difference between delegated management and surrendered control. Grant had offered her a national platform inside a company where he owned no stock, held no board seat, and possessed only revocable vendor access. The board's response followed the contract rather than emotion. Heir Strategic's suspension became formal. Its 5-year renewal proposal was rejected. All new campaign work stopped, and the company was barred from editing student-facing materials or representing Astor Ridge during the review period. Grant retained his 61% stake in Heir Strategic and remained CEO of his own company. Astor Ridge could not remove him from a business it did not own. It could, however, terminate the relationship that had allowed him to treat Maya's schools as an extension of his brand. Lauren's proposed ambassador role disappeared because it had never legally existed. Her access to Astor Ridge systems remained disabled, and Heir Strategic placed her on administrative leave while its own directors reviewed the certification she had signed. Then the finance team presented the transition costs. Designers, video editors, event staff, and outside vendors had completed approved work before the misconduct became known. One director recommended withholding payment until Heir Strategic reimbursed Astor Ridge. Grant agreed quickly. "Those invoices are tied to a compromise campaign." Maya looked through the list. Most of the names belonged to employees who had followed valid work orders and never seen the hidden renewal strategy. "Pay the people who completed legitimate work," she said. "Separate their labor from the unauthorized decisions made above them." The board approved payment for verified services, preserved graduation photographs for families, and protected staff positions during a 45-day vendor transition. Maya could have used the review to make every person connected to Grant's company suffer. Instead, she limited the consequences to those who had made, approved, and certified the lie. Once the vote ended, she asked the board to turn its attention from punishment to the students whose stories had nearly become corporate property. Maya's next decision was not about how to punish Grant. It was about making sure no student's family could ever be rewritten by a vendor again. 3 weeks after the board review, Astor Ridge's directors reconvened in Boston to approve a formal communications and consent overhaul. The 45-day transition away from Heir Strategic was already underway. Existing graduation photographs were being delivered to families, approved campaign work was being closed out, and employees who had performed legitimate assignments were being paid on schedule. Judith Cole led the operational review, while Evelyn Brooks presented the policy revisions line by line. No outside branding firm would again receive unrestricted access to student-facing systems. Commencement programs, seating charts, tribute videos, and speaker designations would require approval from both school administration and an independent internal reviewer before publication. Any use of a student's personal story, family role, health history, or recovery experience in marketing would require written consent from the student and the legally authorized parent or guardian when applicable. Vendors could propose language, but they could not define relationships. The board also separated event production access from student record access, so no communications contractor could alter family information simply because it managed a ceremony. Maya read every clause before voting. She did not want rules written only for the betrayal she had suffered. They needed to work for thousands of families with different structures, histories, and private wounds. Protect the truth without forcing families to explain themselves, she said. Judith added that request to the implementation standard. The board approved the policy unanimously. Astor Ridge then redirected part of its existing student support budget toward caregiver assistance during extended illness. The program provided academic coordination, temporary scheduling flexibility, and practical support for families balancing treatment, school, and work. It did not carry Maya's name. It did not mention Caleb's surgeries. The people who needed it would simply find help where she had once found only a hospital chair and a laptop balanced on a windowsill. Heir Strategic completed the transition without sudden layoffs tied to Astor Ridge's departure. The company retained unrelated clients, but it lost the 5-year renewal and every school system campaign Grant had expected to control. Its internal review left Lauren without the ambassador title that had never been approved. She returned briefly from administrative leave, then resigned from her executive role after the board concluded that she had signed a certification. Without verified authority, Astor Ridge did not publish a statement attacking her. Her professional consequences remained connected to the decisions she had made. Grant stayed CEO of Heir Strategic because he still held 61% of its voting shares. He did not lose what he legally owned. He lost the contract, access, and influence he had tried to convert into something larger. Maya and Grant entered private divorce mediation in Massachusetts. Their lawyers handled property, finances, and future communication outside the school. Caleb, now 18, decided for himself how and when he would see his father. Maya never asked him to choose sides. She had spent too many years protecting him from adult narratives to turn him into evidence now. By the end of summer, Caleb left for college with the burgundy speech folder packed between textbooks and winter clothes. Before closing the suitcase, he removed the hospital photograph and held it toward Maya. "Do you want this back?" he asked. She looked at the image of her younger self asleep beside his bed, exhausted and unaware anyone had taken the picture. "You wrote the speech," she said. "It belongs with you." Caleb studied it, then slipped it back inside the folder. "Maybe we both keep what it means." After he left, Maya returned to Astor Ridge and stood alone in the auditorium where Grant had tried to give her motherhood away. The seats were empty, the stage lights dimmed, and the family section held no reserved cards. The company was protected. The policies were changed. Her marriage was ending. But one question remained for the year ahead: whether she could remember the mother she had always been without continuing to carry the humiliation of having to prove it. 10 months after Grant called another woman the one who raised their son, Maya returned to the same auditorium and no longer felt the need to prove she had been there. Harrington Performing Arts Center looked smaller without commencement banners and television lights. Morning sun crossed the empty rows in pale rectangles, while graduating seniors gathered backstage for a caregiver forum Caleb had agreed to lead during his first spring break from college. Astor Ridge's new consent policies were now standard across all 6 schools. Vendors could not alter family designations, student stories, tribute materials, or speaker roles without independent review. The caregiver support program had already helped dozens of families manage long hospital stays, missed work, and interrupted school schedules without turning their private lives into advertisements. No plaque carried Maya's name. No campaign used Caleb's recovery. The work existed quietly, which was exactly how she wanted it. She stood near the 6th row in a dark green suit, holding the burgundy speech folder Caleb had brought back from college. Its corners were softer now. Inside remained the graduation address and the hospital photograph of Maya asleep beside his bed, one hand resting near the blanket over his chest. Caleb approached from the aisle wearing jeans, a navy sweater, and the steadiness of someone no longer trapped between his parents' versions of the past. "You kept it," Maya said. "I said we both should." He opened the folder and handed her the photograph. "I don't need this to remember who stayed." Maya looked at the younger woman in the picture. For years, she had seen only exhaustion in that face. Now she noticed the hand that had remained close enough for a frightened child to find when he woke. Footsteps sounded behind them. Grant entered alone. Heir Strategics still operated, smaller after losing the Astor Ridge contract and the national renewal it had expected. He remained CEO of the company he owned, but the school system no longer appeared in his presentations, and no vendor credential opened its doors for him. The divorce mediation had concluded without reconciliation. He and Maya spoke only when necessary, and Caleb decided for himself when to meet his father. Grant stopped several feet away. "Caleb invited me." "I know," Maya said. Caleb glanced toward the stage. "I have to meet the students." Before leaving, he looked at both parents. "Please don't turn this into another ceremony about either of you." Grant lowered his eyes. Maya nodded. "We won't." When Caleb disappeared backstage, Grant looked toward the front row where Lauren had once accepted applause meant for someone else. "I thought I was recognizing the person who had been present in his recent life," he said. Maya did not answer immediately. The old impulse to list hospital nights, therapy schedules, school meetings, and signatures rose and passed. None of it required his agreement anymore. "You weren't recognizing her," she said. "You were replacing me because the story helped your company." Grant placed both hands in his coat pockets. "I was wrong." "Yes." No speech followed. He looked at the burgundy folder, then at the photograph in her hand. "Caleb told me he remembers more than I realized. Children usually do." The backstage doors opened, and a group of seniors entered with parents, grandparents, foster parents, older siblings, and guardians. No one wore a prescribed family title. Each student had chosen the person seated beside them. Maya slipped the photograph back into the folder, closed it, and handed it to Caleb when he returned to the stage. He carried it to the podium, not as evidence against his father, but as part of the story he had chosen to tell in his own words. Maya took a seat among the caregivers. Grant sat several rows away. When Caleb began speaking, he thanked the people who stayed through the parts of life that never made it into public photographs. Maya did not look toward Grant or search the room for recognition. At their son's graduation, he had called his mistress, the woman who raised him. But when Maya stood up, the truth returned her name to the only place it had ever needed to live, in her son's memory.